Over the past, I would say, month or so, I've been trying to draw around every single day so that I can get, a little bit better at art. Had nothing to do, wanted to fill the gap in time with something, so I elected to start drawing. And I wanted to try to give my like say what I feel like I've learned because I didn't start this as like an absolute beginner because I think a lot of these kind of videos come from people that, just started art and they're trying to, say what they've learned, or they're coming from experts that already know what they're doing, trying to give beginners like tips. But I think I think not a lot of content on the internet is focused around that middle ground where you understand enough to not feel like a beginner, but you don't understand enough to really consider yourself an expert. And so that's what I was really trying to understand over these past 30 days or so. Right? I really, and not just in like the, kind of doodle whatever every day. I really tried to think about like anatomy and colors and like these different things that like really tried to focus on them. Which brings me into my first point. I think that you should try to like think about what you're doing wrong. Like look at the thing and think, why doesn't this feel good to look at? And I think a big problem that I had is either my posing or my color usage or whatever it was felt flat and it felt boring. And so it came off in this feeling of, of being very static. And so I think that being able to recognize that and like look at it and not think like, oh, this looks horrible or oh, this looks really good, but being able to think like, okay, I'm looking at this other piece of art. Why does this look good and mine doesn't? Outside of just I'm worse at art, and then giving up. And so I think being able to understand what I was doing wrong and thinking about it and really putting it into words really helped me to think like, okay, the reason why this looks bad is because I didn't blend the background well enough, or I didn't the anatomy on the jaw looks weird, or I went off model too much, or stuff like this where it's like you feel you can feel this like you feel like you're learning a lot more about why you're doing things wrong rather than just feeling like you're just doing things wrong and that's all. Um, Another thing is, especially if you're trying to draw like characters, you're trying to draw references to things, um, make sure that like everything that you're drawing, like you can reasonably I'd say that you can justify the time you're spending on it because in the sense that like if you're spending you know, 30 minutes or something. Let's say you have like you're trying to give yourself 2 hours to draw something, right? I think that if you're spending, let's say that first 15 minutes getting an initial sketch down, and then it's just taking you all this time to try to figure out the jaw, right? Or like trying to figure out like the hand gesture, like this kind of thing. I would say just don't worry about it until a little bit later, unless you just have a lot of time on your hands. Because I think a big thing is, at least for me, I don't have a lot of time to really focus on every single drawing every single day. So I had to kind of cut my cut my losses and try to get it as good as I could. Trying to utilize the time most effectively. And it's not necessarily like you have to set a timer, like I can only spend 30 minutes doing line art, or I can only spend 30 minutes doing like it's not so much stringent, it's more just like I've spent too long on this. I'm just gonna keep going in circles, and maybe once it's all colored in, I can figure out what feels wrong about it. Right? Because you can see, especially in this picture, I spent a lot of time working on the jaw and the face and all that. But the only reason I was able to keep going and doing that is because I felt like I was making tangible progress closer to what the jaw should look like. I thought I was getting closer to what it should actually be, and that's what allowed me to keep going. If you just keep drawing something and it keeps looking bad, just don't worry about it, right? Take it into consideration, look at it at the end, you'll see what you did wrong then, and then you'll be able to bounce back from it. Right? It doesn't have to be perfect now, but but just try to make sure it's better the next time. Right? Um, secondarily, or not secondarily, well, just next point is try to like push yourself of like if you think because a big problem that I have is I started a lot of my art with black and white. I drawing the margins of my books. that kind of stuff at school. And so I was really used to having a black and white style. And so things like colors really scared me because I don't know how to do that. Right. And same thing with using reference images. Like all these things weren't, I never did those because it was never part of the way I knew how to draw. And so for the first like 10 days or so, I just never did that. And I think, I think being willing to kind of just take the leap forward into doing something that you don't necessarily want to do, right? In terms of stuff that like you know you're bad at, like I know I'm bad at landscapes and backgrounds, and I really wish I had tried to push myself to do those better because a lot of my backgrounds I think feel flat, and so I wish I had spent more time trying to push myself to do that better. But one thing that I was really bad at was color, and so I spent a lot of the 30 days really trying to understand like how does color work, like not just how does shading, because like the first few days I was trying to really understand how shading works, but once I felt like I had more of a grasp on that, I wanted to like how does color work? How does blending things work? How does, you know, making something feel more in the foreground and in the background, like these kind of concepts. I wanted to really try to exacerbate that and really try to feel like I feel like I had a better grasp on those things. And so I think again to more concisely put the point in, I think as like really try to focus on the stuff that you know you're bad at, um, while still but like one at a time. Don't try to like if I tried to at straight out the gate do a colorful landscape that had a bunch of hands in it for some reason, right? It would be too many hard things all at once and it would take far too long and I would just feel like a failure at the end. So I was like, you know what? Color. That's always going to be important. It's always going to be, you know, that's always going to be something I need. So let me focus on that. Right. And so then if I go and do landscapes now, I can do them confidently with color because I already know how to do it. So again, look at your art, figure out what you're doing wrong, and try to focus on one thing at a time. Because even though, again, it's not that I'm really good at these things now, it's that I'm better than I once was because I focused one at a time. And that's what helps, you know, me go from somebody that couldn't really understand these things and had everything feel very flat to something that feels a lot more vibrant, something that feels like it can pop out of the screen a lot more at you. Even though, of course, I still have a very long way to go. Um, so, additionally, um, I mean, I'd say that what was really nice about the series that obviously not everybody can do or wants to do is that it made me, it very much felt like I was forced to be consistent. Um, because especially with having to post it, I got to see a lot of other people's art, and it does feel very disencouraging to see people doing a lot better than you. Um, and so just kind of focusing on like, okay, what was I doing wrong here? Not what were these people doing right, but what was I doing wrong? I think really helped me feel like I'm advancing because I think the issue is a lot of people have that initial burst of determination and you know people want to draw and then it just kind of fades away once you see all the other people doing way better than you. And I can again I can understand that, but it's just getting past that initial hurdle. I think is I think it's hard, but it's very important. Um, but yeah, again, that's a lot of the tips that I can really give in the more broad sense. In the more like specific sense, I would say for things like for you know things like your hands, your faces, your like those kind of things. I think people have a hard time drawing. Um, try to like try to really like do a much more principled look because I know a lot of people don't want to take an art class, but try to think about like you know like what are the shapes in this thing? What are the like like if I had to break this down into a much simpler form, how would it look? Right? Like these kind of things that that obviously are, you know, you hear 1,000 times, right? Remember that there's a reason why people say that. And while sure being self-taught can be super fun and stuff, you know, there is a reason why these people have jobs in the nicest way possible. Like, you know, I think recognizing that I'm not as good as I wish I was and being able to just kind of swallow my pride in a sense really helped me like, you know, try to understand hands. And even though I'm not necessarily great at drawing them, I can draw them a lot better than I once could. Because I was willing to kind of swallow my pride and realize it's like, okay, it's not just this big colossal mess. It's like, okay, there's a cylinder here, there's a triangle here, like there's like thinking about that. Um, and I think again, stuff like again, it's a lot of swallowing your pride, right? Because especially being an intermediate, like where I'm at, you have this feeling of I'm already better than some people, so why should I have to care, right? Like why do I care if I'm already like better than a lot of people are ever gonna be? And I think being able to swallow that and realize that like it's not gonna get you anywhere, just kind of looking down instead of looking up, I think was also very important. Um, because again, it's like what like how is that gonna help me, right? And even though I wouldn't say I'm super, that's like I have that problem. I know a lot of people do, and so I think it still is warranted advice. That is going to be around the end of this video, though. I can make more of these kind of videos, more tips and tricks and things I've learned, more speed draws, all that kind of stuff is going to be on the way in the future. So I'd like to thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. See ya.